The Anderson family were longtime residents of Carnation, Washington, a small, peaceful rural town located about 25 miles east of Seattle. They weren't just ordinary people in a quiet town. They were admired and deeply embedded in the community. At the heart of the family were Judy and Wayne Anderson, a married couple who had worked hard throughout their lives and were now enjoying their retirement years. Judy was known for her gentle nature and her dedication as a mail carrier, and Wayne was remembered as a quiet, hardworking man who had once worked as a Boeing aircraft inspector. Their home had always been a welcoming place, especially during the holidays, when they hosted family dinners and gatherings. That's exactly what they were doing on Christmas Eve in 2007, preparing for a family dinner with their children and grandchildren. The family gathering included Judy and Wayne Anderson, the grandparents, their daughter Erica Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe, their son Scott Anderson, his wife Erica, and their two children, Olivia, 5, and Nathan, 3. This gathering represented 3 generations of a single family: grandparents, their adult children, and 2 innocent young grandchildren. All of them tragically lost their lives in the massacre, making the crime not only a devastating loss for those who knew them personally, but also a symbol of broken trust and brutal betrayal within what appeared to be a close, loving household. Neighbors described the Andersons as friendly, helpful, and ordinary in the best sense of the word. They were the kind of family you'd wave to across the yard or share holiday cookies with. No one could have imagined that such unspeakable violence would touch their lives, especially not at the hands of someone within their own family. The sheer senselessness of the act, and the fact that the killers were family members, made the tragedy even harder for the community to process. The Andersons weren't just victims of a random act of violence. They were betrayed from within, during a time meant for family, peace, and celebration. December 24th is a day typically filled with warmth, celebration, and anticipation. For many families across the United States, including the Andersons, Christmas Eve represents a time for gathering, sharing meals, exchanging gifts, and creating cherished memories. But on December 24th, 2007, what should have been a festive evening for the Anderson family turned into one of the most gruesome and heartbreaking crimes in Washington state's history. That evening, Erica Anderson, the daughter of Judy and Wayne Anderson, arrived at her parents' home in Carnation, Washington, along with her boyfriend, Joseph McEnroe. The couple wasn't just coming over for dinner or family time. They were carrying handguns and had already made a plan to murder the entire family. The reasons behind their plan remain both disturbing and confusing, with later court testimony suggesting that Erica was resentful toward her parents and feared losing custody of her future children. She and Joseph allegedly decided that eliminating the entire family was the only solution. They didn't arrive in anger or act impulsively. Instead, they carried out their actions deliberately and coldly, showing a level of premeditation that shocked investigators and prosecutors alike. When they entered the home around 5 p.m., they were greeted by Judy and Wayne, who had no idea what was about to happen. The couple first killed Judy and Wayne, shooting them in the head. Then, in a chilling move, they stayed in the house, knowing that other family members were on their way for the Christmas gathering. Later that evening, Erica's brother Scott Anderson, his wife Erica, and their 2 young children Olivia, age 5, and Nathan, age 3, arrived for what they assumed would be a joyful night with grandparents and extended family. Instead, they walked into a death trap. Joseph and Erica executed them one by one. The children were reportedly murdered last, and the killers admitted they had considered sparing them, but ultimately decided not to, out of fear they would grow up to seek revenge. This massacre wasn't just horrifying because of the violence. It was made even more haunting by the fact that it occurred on Christmas Eve, a night associated with love, faith, and family. The contrast between the holiday's meaning and the events that unfolded adds a deeper level of emotional devastation to this case. While many in the country were sitting around Christmas trees that night, the Andersons were being murdered in their own home by their own daughter and her partner. It's this heartbreaking contradiction that makes the Carnation Massacre not only one of the most brutal crimes in Washington's history, but also one of the most emotionally disturbing. What unfolded inside the Anderson family home on Christmas Eve 2007 wasn't just a murder. It was a calculated, cold-blooded massacre of 6 innocent people, including 2 small children. The killers, Erica Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe, didn't act out of sudden rage or in the heat of a moment. Their actions were deliberate, prolonged, and deeply disturbing, leaving behind a crime scene that shocked even seasoned law enforcement officers. The couple arrived with loaded handguns, having fully planned to execute every member of the family. First, they murdered Erica's parents, Judy and Wayne Anderson, shooting them in the head at close range. But they didn't leave after that. Instead, they stayed inside the home, knowing full well that Erica's brother and his young family were coming over for Christmas dinner. When Scott Anderson, his wife Erica, and their children, 5-year-old Olivia and 3-year-old Nathan, arrived, they too were systematically killed. Joseph later told investigators that he had hesitated when it came to the children, but ultimately, both he and Erica agreed they couldn't let them live, fearing they might grow up and seek revenge. So they executed the children, as if they were threats rather than innocent lives. What made the crime especially horrifying was the level of emotional detachment the killers displayed. Joseph even admitted in interviews that he tried to calm the children down before killing them, one of the most haunting details to emerge during the investigation. The cold, calculated way in which they wiped out an entire family, including their own flesh and blood, sent shockwaves through the community and the criminal justice system. When police entered the home 2 days later, they found a scene so horrific that veteran investigators were deeply affected, with several reportedly seeking trauma counseling afterward. Blood was everywhere. The bodies of the victims lay where they had fallen, some in the living room, some in the hallway, and the children in bedrooms. The contrast between the warm holiday decorations still visible in the house and the graphic violence that took place there made the scene even more gut-wrenching. To many, this wasn't just a crime. It was an assault on the very idea of family, innocence, and trust. The brutality wasn't limited to the physical violence, but extended to the betrayal, the premeditation, and the absolute disregard for human life. In the world of true crime, some murders are shocking for their motive, others for their scale. But the Carnation massacre stands out for its deep emotional cruelty, the methodical erasure of an entire family carried out by someone they loved and trusted most. What makes the Carnation massacre even more chilling is not just the act of murder itself, but the deliberate, calculated patience the killers showed. After murdering Judy and Wayne Anderson, Erica's own parents, Erica Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe, didn't panic or flee the scene. They didn't seem remorseful or shaken. Instead, they calmly stayed inside the house, knowing more members of the family were on their way. They waited in silence for nearly an hour and a half. During that time, they didn't attempt to clean up the scene, escape, or show any hesitation. They simply waited for the next victims to arrive, knowing exactly who was coming: Erica's brother Scott, his wife Erica, and their 2 children, 5-year-old Olivia and 3-year-old Nathan. The couple had come over expecting a warm Christmas Eve dinner with their parents and sister. They brought gifts, likely excited to see the family and share the holiday together. But the moment they stepped inside the house, they were ambushed. Joseph and Erica began by shooting Scott Anderson, then turned the gun on his wife, Erica. The couple fought back in a panic, but they were outgunned and outmatched. Then came the most heart-wrenching part of the massacre: the children. Innocent and confused, little Olivia and Nathan were reportedly trying to understand what was happening around them. Joseph later told authorities that he considered sparing the children, but ultimately, he and Erica decided to kill them too. Their reasoning? They feared the children might grow up, remember what happened, and seek revenge. It's this moment, the intentional decision to wait, to lie in ambush, and to methodically execute every arriving family member, that makes this crime particularly horrifying. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic and patient, which points to a disturbing level of emotional detachment and a complete absence of empathy. The fact that the killers waited calmly, fully prepared to kill their own family, shows this wasn't about rage or mental breakdown. It was about control, dominance, and erasure. They didn't want to leave any witnesses. They wanted no survivors. This level of premeditation and coldness stunned law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and the public. It made the crime not only a horrific act of violence, but a deeply disturbing psychological betrayal, a calculated ambush carried out by those who were supposed to love, not harm. One of the most haunting aspects of the Carnation family massacre is how it went completely unnoticed for nearly 2 full days. After killing all 6 members of the Anderson family on Christmas Eve, 2007, Erica Anderson and Joseph McEnroe simply left the crime scene and went about their lives, leaving the victims' bodies inside the house as if nothing had happened. The Anderson home sat in a quiet, rural part of Carnation, tucked away off a secluded, wooded road. The area wasn't one where neighbors looked in on each other every day or where someone might casually notice something strange. The house remained eerily silent during what should have been a time filled with laughter, lights, and family cheer. Instead, the killers counted on the holiday season and the home's isolation to buy them time, and it worked. It wasn't until December 26th, 2 days after the murders, that alarm bells were raised, but not by neighbors or family. It was Judy Anderson's co-worker who finally noticed something was wrong. Judy had failed to show up for her postal job after Christmas, which was highly uncharacteristic. She was known as reliable, punctual, and professional. Her sudden absence triggered real concern. The co-worker contacted the Carnation Police Department, requesting a welfare check. Officers arrived at the Anderson property and initially found the gate to the driveway locked, which was unusual. They had to force entry to get onto the property. When they stepped inside the house, they were completely unprepared for what they would find. The interior of the home was silent, cold, and soaked in blood. Christmas decorations still hung on the walls, holiday food remained uneaten on the table, and wrapped presents lay unopened beneath the tree. And among these heartbreaking remnants of a joyful occasion were the bodies of 6 family members, each murdered in cold blood. The graphic nature of the crime scene left a deep impact on the responding officers and crime scene investigators. Some later needed trauma counseling to deal with what they had witnessed. It wasn't just the physical violence that horrified them. It was the sense of peace turned into a slaughterhouse, of love turned into betrayal, and the sheer vulnerability of the victims, especially the children. This delay in discovering the scene allowed Erica and Joseph time to hide any direct evidence connecting them to the crime and to continue pretending that nothing had happened. They weren't immediately suspects, because no one could fathom that a daughter would do something so heinous to her own family. The fact that this brutal crime could remain hidden for days adds another layer of sorrow to the case. The family died not only in silence, but in utter isolation, with no one there to save them, and no one knowing what had happened until it was far too late. Following the grisly discovery of 6 bodies inside the Anderson home on December 26, 2007, police began urgently working through the small town of Carnation, Washington, trying to determine who could have committed such an unspeakable act. Initially, there were no signs of forced entry, and nothing of significant value appeared to be missing. The crime did not resemble a robbery gone wrong. It looked personal. That fact, combined with the level of calm and calculation, pointed detectives in one direction: someone close to the family. Before long, attention turned to Erica Anderson, the daughter of Judy and Wayne, and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe. The couple had been present during the murders, yet strangely, they had not reported anything. In fact, they had quietly left the crime scene, made no calls to authorities, and seemingly resumed their daily routine, trying to blend back into normal life, even as 6 members of Erica's immediate family lay dead. Their behavior raised serious red flags. Just a few days after the bodies were discovered, police located and arrested both Erica and Joseph. Once in custody, interrogations began, and the truth unraveled quickly. Joseph McEnroe was the first to break. He gave a disturbing and detailed confession to detectives, admitting that he and Erica had carried out the murders together, with full intent to kill every member of the family. According to Joseph, the idea had been brewing for some time, motivated in part by long-standing resentment Erica felt toward her parents, and fears that they might try to take away any future children she and Joseph would have. In one of the most unsettling parts of his confession, Joseph claimed that he and Erica had hesitated before killing the two young children, Olivia, 5, and Nathan, 3, but ultimately decided that it was better to spare them from the pain of growing up without their parents or becoming emotionally damaged. They believed they were saving the children by ending their lives. This twisted justification showed a deep psychological detachment from reality and a disturbingly warped sense of mercy. Erica, too, eventually confessed, though her interviews reflected a more subdued demeanor. She confirmed much of Joseph's account, even down to the conversations they had before and after the murders. Both admitted that they had planned the killings in advance and had agreed not to leave any survivors. Their confessions were not only chilling, but emotionally void. There were no tears, no signs of remorse, no pleas for understanding. What shocked investigators was not just the brutality of the crime, but how emotionless and calculated Erica and Joseph were when speaking about it. The murders were described almost as if they had been routine tasks, not the cold-blooded execution of their own family. These confessions would go on to form the backbone of the prosecution's case, clear, undeniable proof of guilt, straight from the mouths of the killers themselves. In the end, Erica and Joseph weren't just caught. They handed the truth over willingly. And what they revealed was a story not just of murder, but of deep dysfunction, cold calculation, and an almost incomprehensible betrayal. The judicial process for the Carnation family massacre was long, emotionally charged, and closely followed by the public. Given the brutality of the murders, the cold confessions, and the shocking betrayal of family trust, prosecutors initially pursued the death penalty for both Erica Anderson and Joseph McEnroe. Their actions had, after all, met every criterion for capital punishment under Washington law: multiple victims, premeditation, child victims, and no apparent remorse. However, as their legal cases unfolded over several years, a major shift occurred in the state's justice system that would ultimately determine their fate. In 2018, the Washington State Supreme Court abolished the death penalty, ruling it to be unconstitutional due to racial bias in its application. This landmark decision effectively removed capital punishment as a sentencing option, even for the most heinous crimes. As a result, prosecutors had no choice but to seek life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for both Erica and Joseph. By that time, the evidence against them was overwhelming. Their own detailed confessions, physical and forensic evidence linking them to the scene, motive and premeditation clearly established in court. There was no ambiguity about guilt, and the only real question was whether they would spend their lives in prison or die by state execution. In separate trials, both were found guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder. During the proceedings, family members of the victims delivered emotional impact statements, expressing grief, confusion, and anger over how a daughter could participate in the slaughter of her entire family, including her own niece and nephew. In the end, Joseph McEnroe was sentenced in 2015 to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Erica Anderson received the same sentence shortly afterward. Both were sent to maximum security prisons, where they will spend the rest of their lives. They will never be eligible for parole, nor will they have another opportunity to live freely again. While some felt that justice was served, others, including surviving extended family and community members, struggled with the fact that such evil went unpunished by death. But for many, knowing that Erica and Joseph would die behind bars, completely cut off from the world and the lives they destroyed, brought a sense of finality and closure. Their life sentences now stand as a permanent reminder of a crime that devastated not only one family, but an entire community, and continues to haunt Washington State's history as one of its most brutal and senseless massacres.